We're back here. Thank you so much for choosing to join us. This is Village Square Africa, and my name is Keminni Amanor. What are we talking about today? Today we go to South Africa and talk about the ANC elections. Look how it turned out. We want to discuss the future of President Cyril Ramaphosa. We also want to discuss the future of the political party ANC and what it beholds for the country. You want to stay with us here for that conversation. But first, we'll bring you the African headlines. Very familiar face. One you love is still here with us. We'll come back with that. Stay with us. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has retained the leadership position of the ANC, giving him a shot at a second five-year term as president. His win comes amidst calls for him to step down as president and leader of the party because of allegations of corruption and constitutional breaches brought against him. Last week, he survived the vote to start impeachment proceedings against him over a parliamentary report that said he may have broken anti-corruption laws by keeping undeclared sums of foreign currency at his farm and failing to declare the theft afterward. This is even as other investigative bodies are looking into Ramaphosa's conduct at his Palapala farm. Despite these, some 2,476 people, members of the ANC, reinstated confidence in their leader by voting to retain him as at the party's national convention that ended on Tuesday. He beat his former health minister Zweli Mkhize by 859 votes, a margin bigger than his 2017 win. At the conference's closing ceremony, Ramaphosa said he was looking to unify the party, work on the country's failing electric grid, and tackle corruption. Take a listen.
We need, as we move on, to resolve a number of challenges that confront our country, but we also know that we can only confront those challenges if we are a united organization. If the ANC is divided, it will never be able to unite the people of South Africa.
How successful will he be? Will the fracture in the ANC deepen after this conference? Let's find out. Thank you so much for joining us here on The Square. I am Keminni Amanor, and you're warmly welcome. Also joining our gathering are Professor Bonke Dumisa. He's an economist. He's joining us from Pietermaritzburg in South Africa. And then we have Gideon Chitanga. He's a research associate at the African Center for the Study of the United States. Gentlemen, you're welcome to The Square.
Good afternoon. Greeting you from Pietermaritzburg,
Great.
Not so far from Durban.
Great. Prof, I want to start with you. Any surprises caught you after the conference as far as, the elections are concerned? Were you surprised by anything at all?
Not necessarily, because we always knew that the polls were always saying that President Cyril Ramaphosa was going to win this second term. And it was just the way in which some people were busy campaigning against him that created some doubt that there was a possibility that he could not come back. Why am I saying that we always knew that he was going to be re-elected? It is because President Cyril Ramaphosa has effectively fought corruption, and he was very influential and supportive of the Zondo Commission, which dealt with a litany of corruption against many people in South Africa. And it was precisely for that reason then that there was a concerted effort by some people who were implicated in the Zondo Commission and in other corruption things then that they wanted to see him not retaining this position. So it was for that reason then that the global markets were very comfortable when he retained his position. Just to give you a picture when it comes to the global markets, to the currency of South Africa. On Friday last week, the South African rand, when compared to the US dollar, was at 17.
Well, I think we lost Prof there as well. We have also lost our other guest on the program today. Gideon and Prof are joining us on the subject of the ANC's recently concluded national conference. I hear that Prof is back over the Zoom connection, so let's take a listen to Prof. Prof, now you have made your point that you're not surprised, and perhaps what has happened to Ramaphosa is because of his efforts to fight corruption, citing the Zondo Commission as an example. So I want us to talk about the unifier speech that he gave post the elections. How successful will he be at doing that, given the backdrop of all the things that you have said?
I think it's going to be more effective as it is now. And the major reason for that is in his first 5 years, he was always looking over his shoulders because, unfortunately, for the first time in South Africa, the predecessor of President Cyril Ramaphosa spent all his time from day one to day last always looking at ways to sabotage President Ramaphosa. So, and he had his own people who were always advocating, saying things against Cyril Ramaphosa, including the person who lodged that criminal case against Cyril Ramaphosa on the Palapala farm case. So, as it is now, as he's coming back, he no longer has to look over his shoulders because he no longer cares about what those people are going to be up to. When people are having their second term, then they do what they want to do in order to create a legacy for themselves. And I believe that President Cyril Ramaphosa will do just that.
Let's welcome Gideon back into the conversation. I apologize, we lost the connection back there. But I'll take you to the beginning of our discussion today. Now, the bets, the money, you could say that people put their money on Cyril Ramaphosa. But when you look at the margins by which he won, what does it tell you about the ANC? Gideon, can you hear me? Well, I don't think Gideon can hear me, and so I'd move on with Prof. Prof, you were talking about detractors of President Cyril Ramaphosa and the fact that if he's able to get into the second term, as it's hoped for, he will be able to do the things that he likes. But I want us to talk about the KwaZulu-Natal province. It would appear that province, even though has the highest number of delegates, went into the elections and came back empty-handed. This is an area where former President Zuma also holds a lot of power. The dwindling influence of KZN in the ANC must tell you something. What kind of reading do you make into this?
For me, or unfortunately for me, I live in that province. As I'm talking to you, I'm talking from KwaZulu-Natal. What has happened was the people of KwaZulu-Natal allowed themselves to do everything just around the former president Jacob Zuma, and they lost the plot that what counts here are the interests of South Africa. You cannot just going around one person instead of thinking about the interests of the whole country. Let us just step back to last year, 2021 in July. You had people who were burning shops, who were looting shops. It cost over 300 lives, and the damage was estimated at billions of rands. And people were still supporting, because the people were saying they are showing their support for that former president. So President Cyril Ramaphosa had to keep on just dealing with all those things. And that's why I am saying KwaZulu-Natal, as it is now, I think they've learned a lesson that the interest of the country and the interest of their political party, the ANC, are more important than the personal interest of one individual. And I think with this realization, President Cyril Ramaphosa and his presidency will be able to deal more with service delivery issues than dealing with all these challenges and attacks from the people who call themselves the RET forces, the Radical Economic Transformation people. We need to deal with what is in the best interest of South Africa rather than what is in the best interest of one individual.
Very well. Speaking of that one individual, do you think that this is the beginning of the end of the power former President Zuma holds on KZN ANC?
The KZN ANC can re-emerge. If ever they can learn lessons from what has happened now, they can re-emerge as a powerful force in the future, so long as they accept that you cannot win national elections on tribal lines. Because their efforts now and their campaign was more on a tribal line, and South Africans are tired. We're divided by along tribal lines during apartheid years. We cannot continue with those things now in a post-apartheid era.
Let's talk a bit more about this, the unity of the party. We know that some of Ramaphosa's own members of government criticized him. We can talk about Lindiwe Sisulu, the tourism minister, the governance minister in Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma also criticized him. In fact, went ahead to vote for an impeachment of Ramaphosa. Now, what readings are you making into how this could play out? You have these two people still members of the party, members of Ramaphosa's government. Ramaphosa has been retained. He is president now for the next 2 years. He could have another 5-year term. How could this play out for Lindiwe and Nkosazana?
If ever they are prepared to work with him and stop all these things they've been doing, Cyril Ramaphosa is the type of a person who is more reconciliatory than attacking people. So if ever they stop all these things they were doing, I don't think they'll have a problem. But if ever they continue on what they're doing, then they may find themselves being offloaded. In fact, the ANC members themselves have offloaded them. They could not get any backing from the last ANC National Conference. Both of them could not get at least the minimum 25% threshold. So which means the ANC members themselves have said, we don't need people like that. Would rather, President Cyril Ramaphosa got the largest number of votes for anyone who was voted in the top 7 this time around. So people have got to accept that democracy works and majority rule works. And
absolutely.
Stop fighting personal wars.
And it would seem that's the position of the party post the elections. But I just want to ask, Ramaphosa is due to reshuffle next year. Do you see him booting out his fiercest critics?
Well, he has been asked that question directly, and his spokesperson has said that Cyril Ramaphosa, as a reconciliatory person, will not go out of his way to remove those people. But it is the duty of those people to make sure then that if ever they want to retain their positions, then they must work as a team and not fight proxy wars for one ex-president. And because Dr. Nkosazana Zuma is a very effective cabinet member. He has been very effective in the portfolios he has been given. So people would like to see going on, so long as she does not get into those other politics. But as for Lindiwe Sisulu, I cannot say the same. She has served in so many portfolios since 1994, and she has not made an impact on any one of them. So she may easily be offloaded, not because she opposed President Cyril Ramaphosa, but because she has not been effective in any of the more than 10 portfolios she has held ever since.
Prof, hold your horses for me. Let's give Gideon's connection another try. Gideon, can you hear me now?
Yes, but you are still breaking, but I can hear some of the things that you are saying. Can you come again with your question?
I'm here to ask the question, so that's a good start. Now, what are your thoughts about things that have happened during the convention, the ANC convention, and looking at the margins that Ramaphosa won the elections by? What analysis have you made of that?
I'm struggling to hear you, but if your question is what I have made of the Congress outcome, so I think in short, the Congress gives a picture that President Ramaphosa has consolidated his hold on the ANC, and like the earlier analyst has said, this is a very important step in the sense that he should be able to demonstrate that he's very decisive, probably more efficient than he was in his first term. And obviously, South Africans and members of the ANC expect to see some robust leadership going forward in addressing some of the key issues within the ANC, but also the critical national problems that the country is going through. The second thing is that I agree with this idea of a renewal of the ANC and probably national renewal. But what I struggle with is what it means for the ANC, for the new ANC leadership, and probably what it means for the public. Is it about style of leadership? Is it about renewal of South Africa, the country, in the sense of renewing its institutions and dealing effectively with other problems like corruption? Is it about broadly a clear vision about how to navigate the country out of the current problems? And if it is the last, then what we expect to see, which we have not seen yet, is beyond the descriptions of the problems that the country is going through, which we have seen a lot of in the articulated ANC policies and the challenges. How and what exactly is President Ramaphosa and his new team are going to do to take the country out of the economic problems, of the social problems, and how are they going to deal with the internal contradictions within the ANC?
Very well. I'm going to have us look into that question you have asked in a moment. But first, I want you to talk to us about how the ANC can make sure that its fractured front does not deepen after the elections, Gideon.
Yes, look, I think that we should not over-dramatize the divisions that we saw, because for me, they are partly a product of the nature of democratic contestations. The ANC is a democratic party to the extent that you don't see in many political parties in Africa. So I take the contestations that we witnessed as a great reflection of democracy, intra-party democracy. But beyond that, it is the factionalized, personalized politicking and campaigning to the point where it then derails a proper democratic contestation, which is a problem for me. In terms of how the new leadership will go beyond this, I think the ANC is renewing itself. I would beg to differ with the earlier speaker in the sense of unity, as implying that President Ramaphosa should continue to carry leaders like Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma and others who were openly extremely critical of him and the whole nature of cases that surround him as a person and as the president. I think that President Ramaphosa should allow himself to bring up new leaders within those who were elected and other technocrats elsewhere. The key part of renewal should not only be renewal in the sense of renewing institutions, it should be also allowing new blood to come into the leadership of the ANC. I assume that there are very young people who are raring to go, who probably should be able to demonstrate the same leadership skills that Nkosazana and others have demonstrated, or who could even be better. So that requires President Ramaphosa to be very bold in terms of constituting his executive, and also allowing the ANC to cascade down to its provincial leadership institutions within the party and at the national level. Because part of these structures within the ANC and at the level of national and local governance have been problematic. And one of the major problems is that those leaders that are there, they are quick to embark on self-enrichment, corruption, instead of effectively delivering for the people of South Africa by embarking on fulfilling the policies of the ANC, as it were.
Very well, Gideon. So here's my next question to you. Where do you see former President Zuma in this renewed or in the process of renewal of the ANC?
Look, I'm struggling to get the full question, but I want to at least respond to the issue of partisan mobilization around the person of President Zuma. For me, there are two ways to go about this. President Zuma should allow himself to retire from national politics. He served 2 terms, the last one which he did not complete, but he usually gave everything that he could give to the nation. He should gracefully retire, allow himself to be a senior leader who can be consulted on critical issues, allow himself to engage in dialogue with the ANC and with President Ramaphosa. That is very important for the country to move forward. There's a huge risk that relates to the kind of politics that President Zuma is playing, which is very dangerous. And it is specifically driving an ethnic wedge between South Africans and within the country. And we know that negative ethnicism, particularly where it mutates into partisan mobilization, can be very dangerous and can be a cause of instability. The second thing I would say is that I would urge, and I think this should happen, President Ramaphosa should open dialogue, either directly or through other senior leaders, to find ways of retiring President Zuma and allowing himself to deal with issues that concern him personally in the sense of cases before the law, to address those cases outside the ANC and outside the space of government. I think that is very important. So he should be bold enough to stand and defend himself against the law. He should allow the ANC to move forward and allow those leaders that have been elected now to serve their mandates.
Very well.
Without his issues or him personally disrupting their roles within the framework of their mandates.
Indeed.
I think the country is it does not need a former head of state who they trusted with a mandate to serve the country to continue to disrupt particularly this, to be disruptive, particularly at this critical moment when they really need solutions to critical policy issues.
Very well. Gentlemen, we're going to come back to this conversation after the short break. We will look at how, the parliamentary elections could look like for the ANC and what it means for Cyril's or Ramaphosa's bid for a second term. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. Today we are discussing the outcome of South Africa's ANC elections, which has given President Cyril Ramaphosa as short as a second term in office. Still with me are Professor Bonke Dumisa. He's an economist joining us from Pietermaritzburg. And Gideon Chitanga is a research associate at the Africa Center for the Study of the United States. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your patience here. I'll come back to you, Prof. The ANC as they are now, I want us to juxtapose this to what their performance could be in the parliamentary elections, given the backdrop of, the cracks within their front. What do you think they would look like in the parliamentary elections?
You're talking about in 2024?
Yes.
Yeah, 2024 is actually about 18 months away. The ANC can be able to regroup and still win convincingly as they did in the past. Because as I say, in the past 5 years of President Cyril Ramaphosa's presidency, They were affected by 2.5 years of COVID. COVID just messed up everything throughout the world. And Cyril Ramaphosa had to deal with those challenges. And then there was President Zuma's antiques throughout everything. So as it is now, as we have accepted then that his role is very minimal as it is now, he must go and retire and spend more time with his grandchildren, then this government must focus on what is important in South Africa. We've got high unemployment rates, we've got high crime rates, we've got to consolidate and improve the economy and be able to have economic growth rates of over 4% at least. And you cannot do that thing if ever you're always looking over your shoulder because your predecessor is always sabotaging you. So they'll be able to, they may regroup. I do not believe that, yes, they may lose the 50% national vote, but I don't see them going down further than 48% at least. So the ANC will still be in government after 2024.
Very well. I'll take you up again on when you say they should focus on what is important for the country. But let me move over to Gideon now. Gideon, do you feel that the status quo, if it remains, could open the field for other parties to steal some ANC seats in the parliamentary elections, thereby threatening the majority position of the ANC and maybe even Ramaphosa's second term?
So I think the earlier speaker summarized very well the challenges that South Africa has faced in part of President Ramaphosa's tenure. I would also add the protests that happened earlier in the year and their impact on the South African economy was huge. Maybe also add the infrastructure in the country is also looking very bad. And recently we had floods, which also affected much of that. There is a phenomenon in South Africa which we witnessed in the past local government elections, and to me, that points to decline across all the political parties, not only the ANC. So there's the confidence in political parties as important institutions of society is declining, and that with the confidence in political leaders. And indeed, President Ramaphosa got a huge mandate in his first election. It's not clear that he will be able to achieve the same in the next elections. But if the question is there an alternative? Will the ANC retain power? It looks to me that yes, the ANC remains the most dominant party, the most organized, the most cohesive. Its policies are still sound. But having said that, I think there are things that might have to be done urgently.
Gideon, are you there? Well, I think we lost Gideon, so we'll continue the conversation with Prof. Prof, you mentioned that the party, by extension, the president, Cyril Ramaphosa, needs to focus on the things that are important to South Africans. One of the things he mentioned in his victory speech was the fact that he felt that the ANC was partly to blame for Eskom's crisis, being the electricity energy situation in the country at the moment. What do you think he meant by that?
Exactly what he meant by that.
Yes.
In some of my economic analysis, I've highlighted this issue that there was no political will to address the Eskom issue. As it is now, as President Cyril Ramaphosa is saying this, it shows there's now finally the political will to solve.
Well, if you just joined us, we're having a very insightful conversation with two gentlemen, Professor Dumisa and Gideon Chitanga. We're discussing South Africa's ANC elections that voted massively for Cyril Ramaphosa, the incumbent leader, retaining him, giving him a second shot at presidency. in the parliamentary elections to come in 2024. We have been looking at some election permutations, whether or not the fractured front of the ANC could lead to the party losing the majority hold in parliament and thereby threatening the second term for Cyril Ramaphosa. We've also looked at whether or not the party has the ability to unite itself. Now, I see that both of my guests are back, and so I'm going to try them again. Prof, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Sorry about that one. I thought it came from someone who was calling, and I thought maybe it was because there was a cut, and then, yeah.
It happens. It happens. We understand. Now, go ahead and make the point about not having a political will to deal with the power crisis in the country.
Yeah, no, I was saying that we are seeing many former ESCOM employees and current employees and service providers being arrested and being prosecuted for their role in, because the reason why ESCOM has had so many problems, it has not been really an engineering thing. It is because you had many people who had a vested interest in seeing ESCOM fail. And so as they are being arrested now, and including some big names, then the whole issue about ESCOM not being able to break even, then it's going to be addressed. Because we've had many instances where it has been ESCOM employees and service providers who have been sabotaging ESCOM infrastructure. So when they start arresting many of them, that will diminish. So I think we are beginning, and there's a new board there which has many people who have been very successful in other board duties. I'm not talking about Mickey Mouse boards, but I'm talking about top boards. Then I think the ESCOM issue is going to be resolved. But we are seeing some last kicks of a dying horse, with some people really trying to push ESCOM to the brink.
I guess we'll have to see how that goes. And I truly wonder what a Mickey Mouse board is. But I'll move to you now, Gideon. What will it take for the president to make good on his word regarding the energy crisis? And in fact, why should South Africans believe him now, seeing that he's been a part of the problem the last 5 years?
So if the question is the extent to which President Ramaphosa continued to be viewed as a credible leader and whether South Africans have confidence in him, I think they do. And one interesting thing that I get in conversations about Palafala is that you hear people who say President Ramaphosa did not take anyone's money. It was his money. I think what they are saying is there's a difference between people who are facing the law because they stole from the state or they are implicated in corruption by way of abusing state resources. And in his case, we are talking about his own resources. So for them, they are not really keen on the legal, constitutional matters of the state and the extent to which this issue potentially violates the Constitution of South Africa, as it were, if it does, and I mean if it's legally proved. I think that he looks to me in the current crop of politicians in South Africa as the most credible candidate to move the country forward. We see from the response from the markets that they have confidence in his leadership. As soon as he was elected, the South African rand rebounded. So that is very important. The public may have been divided, and part of the divisions were fueled by the different partisan, polarizing political tactics, which eventually also erode the ANC as a brand and its leadership. So that is very important to note. So I think he is quite well disposed to move the country forward. But earlier on, I wanted to say that I hope that this new ANC leadership will sit down and come up with what I would call a new deal for South Africa, for lack of a better phrase. And this new deal should be something that connects the ANC with the public, the ordinary citizens. One, second, it should quickly address the issue of unemployment. And there are so many problems where opportunities lie. The issue is, will President Ramaphosa and his leadership be able to pull the international investors, the domestic capital, to back what could be massive infrastructure development, probably more focus on land reform and addressing historical structural problems around the agrarian question. So in short, I'm saying the issue of confidence, particularly with respect to the public, will be measured by whether President Ramaphosa will have an envelope that quickly resonates and catches the social base of the South African public. If they do that, the ANC will definitely resoundingly win the next election. But in the absence of something that urgently resonates and reconnects the ANC with the ordinary supporters, the party may have postponed this crisis as an opportunity to address its problems to a later date, and whether it will survive another crisis, we'll wait to see.
Very well. Now, Prof, I'm coming to you now. Talk to us about how you think the ANC views corruption, given the backdrop that when you look at the top emerging candidates in the last elections, Ramaphosa himself is facing multiple investigations for his alleged conduct on his Pala farm. And then we have Zweli Nkezi, on the other hand, who himself was connected to another corruption-related scandal that benefited his family, which led to him resigning. Yet, you have delegates in the ANC vote massively for both candidates. What does it say about how corruption is viewed in the ANC?
I think many people in the ANC do view corruption in a serious light. But as Gideon has correctly said, what has happened with South African politics and ANC politics is that they've been so personified that people have reached a stage where they simply say, the people who we believe in are just being dragged into these things. You no longer know when it is because of their own doing, or they are just being dragged into these things. And then I don't want to say it's a question of the devil we know than the one we do not know. I don't want to say that, but at least they are saying, we do believe in these people. They are not angels, but they can be rehabilitated, if ever that's the right way, rather than bringing in people we do not know who may be experimenting with that hot seat.
Gentlemen, I am grateful for your time with us. We had a really insightful conversation. Thank you too at home for joining us on today's episode of Village Square Africa. I am Keminni Amanor. I'll see you same time tomorrow right here on News Central TV. Bye-bye.